All right, here we go. Still in Unit 3. The next page in our notes is talking about zeros of functions. So again, we're still talking about functions. We know a function has to pass the vertical line test. We know there can only be one value of x that matches for y. So definition of a function is still a really, really big deal. We know a function's a relation. It's a special relation. So here we're going to continue and talk about what are the zeros of a function. Well, there's two ways to really read zeros. We can read them on a graph, and we can read them using algebra. So algebraically or using algebra. So we can read it from a graph, and we can read it using algebra. When it talks about looking at zeros on a graph, all it's saying is, where does your graph cross on the x-axis? That's it. It says the point at which your graph crosses the x-axis. That's it. The point at which it crosses the x-axis. So if we look at number 1, where is this graph crossing the x-axis? Oh, it's shaking. It crosses the x-axis. Let's identify my origin here. Here is my origin. I'm going to identify my origin in red. Okay? So it crosses the x-axis at 2. So it crosses it at 2. So f of x equals 2. All right. Now, let's look at number 2. Where does it cross? Well, it crosses here and here. So it crosses a solution set more than 1 in algebra is a solution set. So it crosses at -2 and 1. Look at number 3. Where does it cross my x-axis? It crosses it right here. So it crosses it, and you can even put it in a bracket form. Crosses it at 3. Let's look at number 4. Where does it cross? Here's my origin. Let's identify my origin in green. And then it crosses here and here. So it crosses it at -4 and at 1. Does everybody see how I'm just literally looking to see where it crosses my x-axis? So if we scroll down to 5, where does it cross? It crosses it here and it crosses it here. So it crosses it at -1 and it crosses it at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at number 6. How many times does it cross? It crosses once, twice, 3 times. And where does it cross? It crosses at -1, 2, 3, 4, -5. It crosses it at 0, and it crosses it at 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's how to read it from a graph. It is literally, where is it crossing my x-axis? So let's go back up to the notes, and I'm going to keep it there. So when you have zeros graphically, it's the point at which they cross the x-axis. Algebraically, it is the point, or points, at which f of x equals 0. Because my output will always be 0. I think in my notes I wrote it as this. That is not correct. That is not correct at all. So disregard that I wrote it, because my output will always be 0. Notice if you graphed all these points, this is x is 2, y is 0. This is x is -2, y is 0. X is 1, y is 0. So my value on my graph will always be 0. That y value will always be 0. So algebraically, let's look. So I'm trying not to erase that definition, but you can still see. So it's saying the points at which f of x equals 0. So when I have my output is 0, it's asking me to solve for my value of x. That's all it's asking me to do. It's saying, what is x when my output is 0? So I'm going to add 8. And I get 8 equals 4x, and then, of course, x equals 2. So when x is 2, my output is 0. So all of these outputs are 0. It's asking me to find x. So on number 8, I know my output is 0. It's asking me to find x. So subtract 2 on both sides. -2 equals 2x. X equals -1. So when x is -1, my y value is 0. So all my y value is going to be 0. So let's go down to number 9. I'll do 9 and 11. So when my output is 0, what's my value of x? So I solve for x. Subtract 7. Negative 7 equals negative x. X then equals 7. So when x is 7, my output is 0. Same thing. If I want to find my 0 function, or my value, my zeros, when my output is 0, what's my input? Subtract 2, get negative 2 equals 1/2 x, multiply both sides by 2, and x equals negative 4. So when x is negative 4, y is 0. So that's what it looks like graphically, and that's what it looks like algebraically. So let's go back and fill out the notes. So look at all these points. This point, this point, this point, this point, this point, this point. What are all these values called? Well, we already know they're zeros because that's the topic of this unit. So they're called zeros. You'll also hear them called solutions. When it asks, what is the solution to this equation? It's actually where it crosses the x-axis. You will hear it called roots, and you will hear it called x-intercepts, because where is it intercepting the x-axis? So a lot of different names for these points. Roots. If I ask you what the roots are, you'll say where it crosses the x-intercept. If I ask you the x-intercept, that's the same thing as your zeros. If I ask you the solution, that's the same thing as your zeros. Okay, so lots of different words that describe that. Let's go back down here. And what did we do? Let's go back so you can fill in your notes. What were the steps that we did? Well, step 1 is we set the function equal to 0. And then what did we do for step 2? We solved it. And of course, I can always do step 3, which is check it. Okay, so that's if you want to fill in your notes so we have that available to us. And then in class, we will go over using the graphing calculator. So that's the 0. So a lot of vocabulary here in this short unit on functions. Lots of vocabulary. Good luck. Come and see me if you don't get it.